Hello and welcome to the Little Twist Big Shout podcast, father and daughter show, where me, Nanjaloon,
and me, Eden,
talk about Coventry City Football Club. On this first episode, we'll do a little bit of a background on why we started the pod, a review of last season, and then a look ahead to the season ahead, as well as get Eden's predictions. So it'll be slightly longer than normal, but I hope you enjoy. So a bit of background on why we started the pod. Well, partly because I just got infuriated by reading Coventry Twitter and all the rabbit holes and bandwagons that people jump on there. So decided I'd start my own little space for expressing my thoughts and feelings. Won't be for everyone, but hopefully some people will enjoy it. I've been supporting Coventry since the 1980s. My first game was Millwall away in 1989. 4-1 loss, consolation goal from Dave Smith. My uncle in his wisdom decided we would be okay sitting in the Millwall end, so I got a little clip round the ear celebrating Dave Smith's goal. But yeah, so been following the team kind of for quite a few years, not always full on, but yeah, of late back with a season ticket and living in London, so don't get to all the games, but get to as many as I can up there at the CBS. And my daughter is still pretending to be interested in Coventry, so I thought it would be a lovely project for us to do together. So, looking back at last season, which I think was an interesting campaign, obviously terrible start under Mark Robins, just sort of seemed to come into the season undercooked or just a little bit off, despite having what looked like quite a promising pre-season. Certainly after the Everton game last year, I was quite excited going into the season, and it just all was a little bit flat to start with, although I think even during that run, you know, the games were pretty tight. I think we were probably, you know, a bit unlucky generally. Like it seemed like every time we gave up a chance, goals were scored against us, and I still think some of our better performances from last season came under Robins, particularly the Oxford game at home, even though we did give away 2 goals there. Middlesbrough away, bit of an asterisk with their sending off, but I thought they were really fantastic performances. And we'll obviously get onto the Lampard period a bit later, but don't think the performances were massively better. Obviously results were definitely better, which is the name of the game. So I think it was just sort of a bit of a statistical anomaly, you know, why the results were so bad to begin with. And yeah, I think, you know, generally, I think we did have one of the better teams in the league, so should have been in and around that top 6, which obviously ultimately we did end up there. So it was a frustrating start. You know, hands on the table, I was not really in favour of getting rid of Mark Robins. But, you know, given how the season ended, you can't really have too much of a dig at Doug. And Lampard obviously came in, and over the course of the season, we were able to pick up quite a few results. Particularly had that 9 wins out of 10 run from late January, which really propelled us up the table and gave us a real good chance of getting into those playoffs. Ultimately, I think the positives were we seemed to just improve the fitness the professionalism under Lampard. Feels like we're a little bit more prepared, a bit more organised as a club. Even just looking at the warm-ups and everything like that, it just felt like there was a level of professionalism introduced, and that was reflected in the results. We were able to sort of get a goal or 2 goals ahead and just wrap up the games, despite probably not performing much better than we did under Owens, in my view. But obviously the vibes were good, the team spirit seemed to improve a lot, and that goes a long way, especially when you have a team that is amongst the better teams, with better players, and particularly at home we were very good in terms of results. I mean, if you look at the season as a whole, I think XG wise, attacking wise, we were pretty good. I mean, like, we were only second to Leeds in terms of XG over the season, so it shows that we were creating chances. I will talk a little bit about the strikers a bit later, but I don't think our problems were going forward, even though watching the games, I think a lot of people might feel like this. It seemed quite pedestrian and predictable. You could sort of tell what we were going to do. The patterns were quite established, and sometimes it felt like there was a lot of kind of good progressive play without really carving out great chances. But the stats show that we were able to create quite a lot of chances. We were at 1.4 goals per game, so 4th, only behind Leeds and Norwich and Burnley, level with Middlesbrough and Sheffield United. So attacking wise, we were good, up there in the top where you expect to be, and as I said, second only to Leeds on expected goals. So I think going forward was not really the problem. We scored enough goals to reach our goals, get into that playoff position. Probably, if we'd had a decent defence, even enough goals to be up at the automatic positions. So I think that's a positive. And I think last year, most people will acknowledge that our problems were really defensively. Conceding 1.3 goals per game, 13th in the league, level with Preston, Watford and Stoke. We were 8th in terms of XG against, so we probably were conceding above our XG, or underperforming that slightly. It did feel like that certainly in the early part of the season. Any time there was a chance against us, it was a goal, and I think that's probably reflected in the stats. And you'd hope that there'll be a correction that can't go on for too long, and obviously we'd be hoping that Lampard can improve on that defensive performance from last year in the upcoming season. Possibly we might bring in a new centre back, especially with Louis Binks having gone out the door. So that's we'll keep a watching brief on that. A lot of rumours about Callum Doyle. I think probably just outside of what we can afford, but would be fantastic if we could get him or someone in that mould who's a sort of dominant left-sided centre back, to sit alongside Bobby Thomas or Lati if Thomas is out, and shore things up a little bit, because we did seem a little bit leaky, and I don't think it was solely down to the defence. We do seem to be quite susceptible to counter-attacks through our midfield, and that seems to have persisted in pre-season so far, so something to keep an eye on. I think Matt Grimes is a fantastic footballer, really good in that quarterback position, and did make a massive difference when he came in. However, I'm not 100% convinced he's the best defensively. He is in the right positions, but he's quite lightweight, and I think positionally we do tend to be caught out with quick balls through the midfield or over the top, particularly over the top of Jay Da Silva or into space when Bidwell's playing. He's quite susceptible to pace, so that does seem like a weakness in our team. And even down the right, Milan gets away with a lot because of his pace, but positionally it does seem like we're quite vulnerable to those counter-attacks. So we'll have to see how that develops this season, hoping that Frank and the team can improve on that. In terms of the strikers, which has been heavily debated online and amongst the fans, I mean, my personal opinion is that we have strikers who are good enough. You know, we've seen Ellis Sims score 19 goals. We've seen Haji Wright score 19 goals and get 12 league goals, even being out for a significant period of the season. I think I acknowledge that both can be frustrating at times, but I think they are good enough. And with Brandon Thomas Asante off the bench or starting when they're injured, I think those strikers are good enough. They're solid championship options. Part of the issue seems to be fitting them into the system that we're playing. I don't think any of them are quite suited to playing the lone striker role, particularly the way we play it. You tend not to get that many chances as a striker, despite the fact the team is creating chances. And that's an issue. I think even, Ellis Sims, will take him first. For me, probably is the best at playing that lone striker role. He's a lot to work on in terms of his hold-up play. And I think the main thing is his anticipation of where the ball is going to arrive. So hopefully they've worked on that over the pre-season, and we'll start to see some slightly better performances from Ellis all round. But overall, I think he's the best at the sort of being the focal point for the team of the ones we have, the strikers we have. Obviously, last season, pretty disappointing with his goal return. I think his XG was expected goals was something like 9.94. One of those will be the penalty at Oxford. And he came away with 6. So, even if he'd performed his XG, he'd have got like 9 or 10 goals and he got 6. So, it's not like he was getting tons of chances and missing loads of them. We just don't create that many chances for our strikers. Hadji was pretty much bang on his XG. So, we can't hold the strikers completely responsible for the goal return. I think a lot of times they are creating space for, Torp or Rudoni or EMC to arrive in the box and provide the finish. So there is a question mark about whether we can get a bit more from our strikers. Obviously, I've said that Ellis probably plays the role the best, but I don't think you can start him above Haji Wright because Haji Wright just seems to have more of a goal threat. Even in a game where he's not particularly playing well, he's still the most likely of our strikers to get a goal. So I think for that reason, he's probably first pick. And, Josh Sargent aside, arguably, probably one of the most efficient strikers or best strikers in the league. Whether you kind of like his style or not, I personally don't agree with the lazy tag that's been put on him. I just think he's a frustrating player. He tries things, and some games, 10 out of 10 don't come off, and you feel like what's going on. And then other games, like the Sunderland game or the Oxford game at home, he looks like a real kind of Premier League level attacker. And I think he does have those attributes to play well, to be a Premier League player. He's got the pace, he's got the physical attributes, even though he doesn't always use them in a kind of imposing way. And his finishing is probably, is decent. We've seen some really quality finishes from Haji. So I can probably agree that if Frank is able to get one out, one in, and get a striker that is going to play that lone role in the way that Frank wants them to play it, that might be best for the club. But in the absence of that, I think we've got strikers that are good enough. Even Ellis Sims, in a season where his scoring output was relatively poor, in most of the games he scored, the Watford away game was a bit funny. I think we almost played with EMC and Ellis Sims up front, but Milan was really high on the right, so you could take that as a one up top or a two up top. But all the other games where Ellis scored, it was in a two, and particularly in that period of games where we went on the long run at the start of it. Frank started off with the Norwich game, moving to the two up top and the three at the back, which we narrowly lost. We were unlucky to lose that game. After that, we had the Bristol game. Thomas Asante scored 1-0. We had the Blackburn game. Thomas Asante and Ellis Sims scored. We had the Watford game. Obviously, that was the Torp double. Swansea away. Sims and Asante scored again. Leeds at home. Difficult game. QPR. Thomas pulled it out the bag. Then we had Sheffield Wednesday. Ellis Sims again with a double, and then after that, Frank moved back to the one up top. So you can see in a two, Ellis Sims is pretty effective, and I think that's where he's largely got his goals at previous clubs. So he's a striker who can find the net, particularly when he gets a bit of form. In the 2003-2004 season, he was often playing up front on his own with Hadji coming off the left, and he was able to get goals in that system, the way Robbins played it in the back half of the season. Scored against Wolves, scored against Man United. So this is a player who we've seen get goals. If you give him chances in and around the box, he will score. He's not the most efficient finisher. He's, understand he can be frustrating, but overall, you have to look at Ellis as a developing player that the club has invested in and should continue to work with to improve, and we'll see the results of that. Players develop at different rates, but he's someone who's scored goals all his youth career, scored goals at previous clubs. He's had one season where his goal scoring output wasn't great. He was rotated quite a lot. So even with the strikers we have, I think that's good enough. If we can find a way to get them a few more chances, as well as having EMC, Rudoni, Sakamoto chip in, and potentially some other goals from midfield, like from Torp, or if we bring in a new number 8, maybe they'll chip in with some goals. So overall, Thomas Asante, I think, is a fantastic player off the bench. Good pace, good attributes to stretch the game when defenders are getting tired. I don't think he's ever going to be like a 20-goal striker, but if we can get him up at like 10 to 15 goals, with Hadji and Ellis maybe getting up 15 to 20, that's more than enough. Maybe slightly optimistic there, but not beyond the realms of possibility, particularly if we get a little bit more classic number 10 play. I think Jack Rudoni was absolutely fantastic last year. Really like him as a player. Sort of elegant, good physicality, but feet are so clever. Good movement into sort of wide areas, but he doesn't do the classic 10 play in the same way as like O'Hare or Palmer did, and I think the strikers did suffer a little bit for that, and I think that we probably, in an ideal world, would have someone like that who we could bring on in games where it's not quite working, who can sort of slip the strikers in or create that bit of movement that just opens up a little bit more space for them. And I think we missed, losing both of them. We did miss having that option last year at times, just to change it up and give the defending team something else to think about. It would be nice, we only have so much money, but it would be nice if we could get that as an option off the bench, or in some cases we could play like the the box with the two, with Rodoni and another 10 behind a striker. And I'll get into looking forward to next season later in the episode. But I think overall, from an attacking point of view, Sakamoto grew into the season. He was absolutely brilliant in the two Sunderland games. EMC was good. Obviously, started off slightly slowly, possibly playing out position. Had an impact on his start. I'd say it probably did. And obviously, once Hadji got injured and he was able to play in his more familiar position, we started to see the best of him. And he's also a very good goal threat, powerful runner. Good skills. I don't think he's actually that quick. I think he's fast enough, but his main attribute is his strength and his ability to kind of create a bit of space to get a cross in or a shot away, and seems to have an eye for goal. Just gets into the right positions and sticks it away. Quite like him on the left. Is a bit more predictable in terms of what you're going to get compared to Hadji, but I think that's probably quite good for Frank. He sort of likes to know what the team's going to do, likes to kind of be able to predict and know these are the patterns, this is what I'm asking you to do. Hadji's a bit more of a maverick in some ways, so but good if EMC's ever injured, good to have Hadji who can slot in there, and he's someone who can score goals from that position. So against teams that we're likely to have more of the ball, I think you can play Hadji there in the left wing position, and just have Asante or Ellis up top. In terms of things to be concerned about, I think there was a bit of a formula to play against us with a low block, and sort of just being a bit rough with Sakamoto, making sure the strikers were doubled up on, and you could kind of find a way to stifle our attacks because you knew what was coming, and then catch us on the break. As I mentioned, we did seem susceptible to counter attacks, and there were a few games Derby were able to do it, particularly in their home game. I think they were a bit lucky in the game at the CBS, terrible game. Obviously, Rodoni gave away the chance, and that obviously led to Mark Robbins being sacked. But I think particularly in the away at Derby, they were able to really stifle us. Plymouth did the same. Those sort of late away games. Luton was a bit of a funny game, obviously, with the sending off, but there was a bit of a formula to stifle us and wait for us to make a mistake at the back, which we invariably did, particularly when we had Brad Collins in goal. Had obviously lost his confidence a bit, so was almost trying too hard. And even when he had a good game, like against Luton, he managed to still make a mistake, which was costly. So let's hope that Frank's got a bit of a plan for that when we're facing low blocks, and a sort of alternative way of getting through that. Maybe getting Grimes further up the pitch, just slip balls in, or just mixing it up a bit. Would be important. We did only win sort of 4 of our last 10 games, I think, which is a bit of a concern. That's not great form towards the end of the season. Kind of snuck into the playoffs in the end, having got right up into a really good position. So let's hope that's ironed out, and that the squad is prepared for the season ahead. And overall, I think we have to class it as a pretty good season. We got into the playoffs, which would have been our main goal, and were slightly unlucky against Sunderland over the 2 legs. I feel like we were the better team, although gave away some big chances. So you could just say Sunderland really executed a good game plan against us, going back to that sort of low block, defending quite deep, and obviously Ballard just cleared everything with his head, which is our main form of attack. So Positives to take, definitely. I think the vibes are good under Lampard. I think the players seem happy. The squad seems quite content. But we do need to see a little bit more tactically going into next season. And hopefully that will make the difference in what will be a far more competitive championship this season. I think all the teams coming down will be strong. Birmingham in particular look quite strong coming up, and there's been some good transfers. So like some Norwich, QPR seem to have signed well. And then there's some teams that are quite unpredictable, like Watford and Middlesbrough. You just don't know which way it's going to go, but they have talented players in their squads. If they can get it together and get it to click, it could be a really competitive season. So I think being tactically adaptable is going to be important because we can't be too predictable and easy to prepare for going into the new season. So overall, I'd probably give us like a 7.5, 8 out of 10 for the season. I think we integrated signings like Redoni, Ephraim Mason-Clark into the team well. Matt Grimes slotted in nicely. So it hopefully looks positive for next season, and a lot of positives to take. And it was at times frustrating, but overall a pretty enjoyable season. Those last minute goals at the CBS were great, weren't they? So I think we have to remember where we've come from, and we're hitting kind of new heights that we haven't been at for a very long time. So let's enjoy it, and we'll move on to a look ahead to the new season, which I have done a little bit in this preview, but let's see how it goes. Okay, we're talking about next season now, and I think there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic. I think the squad looks good. All pretty much have good championship experience, apart from Brow at left back, and you'd hope that there will be an improvement on last season, even if it's just having a better start and just picking up a decent amount of points in the first part of the season, first 10 games or so. I think we should see more from Matt Grimes as he's had time to integrate. They've had time to work in training on what Lampard wants the team to be doing. So overall, I think reason to be optimistic. I think it's a massive year for Frank Lampard. As a manager, he's had an asterisk against his name based on his previous work. He's obviously done pretty well when he's been in the Championship. Two seasons, a season and and 2/3. And he's got into the playoffs in both of those. But I think there's really no excuses this year. He's got one of the better teams and squads in the division. They've been together for a while, so it's a really big year for him as a manager. And hopefully that means that he'll do his absolute best, and the team will buy into what he's trying to get them to do. And it should all bode well for a pretty good season for the Sky Blues. As I said in my review of last season, I think the main areas people are hoping will bring in a bit more depth or replacements are up front and at centre back. Kind of agree at centre back. I think overall last year our main issue was our defence. We scored enough goals despite the strikers not necessarily delivering a lot of goals. And so I think that will continue. I think we'll continue to spread goals across the team, and hopefully Hadji can stay fit for the whole season. So you'd like to think he'll get a few more, and if Ellis and Thomas Asante can chip in with a few more than last season, it looks like Norman Bissett's going to be off on loan or sold, but also Norman Bissett, if he's around, could probably do a good job off the bench, similar to Thomas Asante. Good energy, good pace, good player to be able to bring off the bench. If he's a little bit more targeted with his runs and his energy, I think he can be a really good forward in time. But we'll see what happens with him. So I think really centre back. Although I like Thomas and Kitchen, and we have gone on some good runs with them as the centre back partnership. Back under Robbins with the FA Cup run and the upturn that year, and then last year they were the main two, I think, for Frank, although at the beginning there was quite a bit of chop and change. Binks got a few games, Latty got a few games, but I think as we've gone to a 4 at the back, they're the preferred partnership. I think both of them are decent. Thomas probably slightly higher ceiling, a bit better, but also prone to the odd mistake. So it'd be good, I think, to get ideally a good solid left centre back who maybe goes in there next to Thomas, and they build a really strong partnership. But we'll see what the club does there. If we did start with the two, I think in a team that's performing well, they can be good enough. Rushworth looks pretty good, notwithstanding his a few errors with the ball at his feet in the two friendlies. But I think he looks a really good shot stopper, confident with his feet, and be hopefully fully switched on for the league games. So a net positive. So I think even if we're stuck with what we've got, we'll hopefully improve defensively. And if we can add just a real bit of quality for the at centre back, that might be enough to really shut down some of those goals conceded, reduce that in that column, and if we continue to score at the rate we did last year, that should be enough to have us up near the top end of the table. Obviously, in an ideal world, I think we do bring in a new centre back, especially with Binks going out the door. I think just looking at the pre-season, it looks like we're trying to really squeeze the pitch. So the defence is playing pretty high, which could be a good strategy, but obviously we have to make sure we're not caught over the top, which, I mean, last season we did look vulnerable to kind of good quality balls into space. He didn't seem to have to do that much to really get at our defence. So I'm hoping we can shut that down a bit more with just positioning and where we are on the pitch when we lose the ball, kind of off the ball positioning and work needed a bit of improvement, I think, and you'd like to think they've worked on that in training, and we'll start to see the benefits of that as the season progresses. The midfield, solid. I think, again, if we were being spoiled, we'd probably want a really good number 8 that can just link it all together, get up and down the pitch, maybe start putting some of those through balls into the strikers, which we're not really doing that much of. Like if we could magically put Gus Harmer back in there with Grimes and Rodoni, that looks like a really formidable midfield going forward and backwards. Obviously we're not going to get Harmer back, but someone in that mould who can get up and down the pitch, can tackle, but also can pass, good range of passing. I think that would be sort of icing on the cake for the midfield area. I'm very happy with BTA and Sakamoto on the flanks, and I like Grimes. I think Sheaf and Grimes probably could work. It needs a bit of work in terms of where they position themselves on the field, but that almost could be that sort of Leeds setup where they had Tanaka and Gruev just kind of shutting everything down, and then letting the forward players just do their thing, and also releasing the fullbacks to get really high up the pitch. So could have that kind of setup going. But at the moment, I think it's not 100% working for Sheaf. They're not really getting the best out of him. But he may grow into that as he gets used to playing with Grimes. So that should be quite an interesting thing to watch. You could maybe argue that perhaps Torp would be the closest to what we're looking for in terms of he does have that passing ability, can get up and down, although I think for me Torp, apart from his inconsistency, I think he's not that mobile, which means that he can get caught out if he's up the pitch. But really good technical player I like, player who can pick up goals, get goals. I think probably arguably might be best used as a rotation or backup for Rodoni in the 10. He can arrive in the box like Rodoni, head, good shooting ability. So interesting one to see how Frank plays that one. If you're looking at pre-season, I think the last few games maybe, although Sheaf did look better against St. Pauli, I think maybe you could argue Torp looks a bit better in pre-season, particularly in the last 2 games when he has got on. So yeah, let's see what Frank does on that front. And then the strikers I did speak a bit about in my review of last season, but I honestly think they've taken got a bit of a bad rap, our strikers, but I think they're good enough. I think they probably would get into most teams in the Championship, maybe not Ipswich, but or Southampton, the teams coming down. But Haji Wright, frustrating as he can be, will get goals, good finisher, good pace, just an all-round exciting player. When it comes off for him, sometimes it doesn't, and it can be a bit frustrating. I think he's got a bit of a sort of relaxed style about him, which is good when it looks good. Can frustrate the fans when it's not going so well, but overall I think he's a fantastic player. Really big fan of Haji Wright, and Ellis Sims as well. I think there's a real good Championship level striker in there. He's shown that he can get goals at this level for us and for other teams. Definitely don't think we're getting the best out of him in the way we play, but so it has to be a bit of work on the training pitch to adapt his game to fit how we're playing, and also for us to play a bit to his strengths, like get some through balls going to him, in and around the box, the crosses, get them towards Ellis. Quite often the crosses are going into the box but nowhere near where Ellis Sims is. So let's see how that plays out. I wouldn't be completely shocked if Ellis is sold and a new striker's brought in, just because it doesn't seem like Frank Lampard is a massive fan of Ellis at the moment. But let's see how that plays out. I think if we stuck with what we've got and we don't twist and get a new striker in, I do think they're good enough. We need to create more chances for them, and that's a system thing that Frank's going to have to work out. And if we can get the midfield chipping in, Rudoni, Torp, the wide players, that should be enough going forward. As I said, last year we got enough goals. We did score enough goals to get to even higher than where we were. If we can tighten up at the back and just maintain the level of goals from last season, that should be enough to get us right up near the top of the league. So, always exciting to have new signings, but I think you've got to look at it in the round as a project we've been building over a number of seasons, and I think one of the things we can improve on is sort of squad planning. So if you were starting the project again and you know the plan is to play one forward with wide players, do you sign the same players that we've signed? Maybe not. So I think that's something that Dean Austin and the team need to get right going forward. So when we're adding players, they fit the systems that we're playing, fit the team planning, and then we can get the best out of them. Because I feel like we've got good players, we've signed good players, but we're not always getting the best out of them at the moment. So that's something to watch going forward, and I'm sure Frank and the coaching team will be working on that, trying to ensure we get the best out of all of the players we have. I think one thing I'm slightly concerned about was the form towards the end of the season and the way teams were able to sort of bully us and restrict our ability to get the balls in the box, or to really crowd the box so that it's difficult for us to win those headers, because that seems to be the main plan. Is get good build-up play, get it out wide, and then get it in the box. So you either get a headed chance, a shooting chance, or a corner, which we were, particularly in the beginning and middle part of the season, pretty good at. So we'll see if Frank and the team can add to that, because I think we need some more strings to our bow. We need some good through balls. I'd like to see a lot of in-game changes. So bringing on the subs earlier, maybe moving to 2 up top, whether that's a 4-4-2. We have tried a few times, hasn't looked that great so far, but with Grimes and Sheaf in there, or Grimes and Torp, or Torp and Sheaf, I think you can do a 2 in there if they're responsible in positionally, and then you have the wide players plus 2 strikers. We've already spoken about in the review, Ellis's goals went in a 2, which were not bad even in a bad season. Asante also in that run after Christmas was actually picking up the goals in a 2 as well. So that is something that we have in our arsenal, and if our strikers are better in a 2, that's something that Frank needs to look at, maybe when we're chasing games, or just to mix it up a little bit so it's not so predictable. And that's something I'd really like to see from Frank. We've got good options at wing back if we want to move to a 3 at the back in some games during game, and get an extra forward on. So that'll be interesting to see. I think it's the 3 at the back. It's not my favourite formation, but if you look at the games, statistically last season, it was the more successful formation. It was the more effective. We got more wins per game with it. Win percentage was much higher. So I think that's something to think about, Frank and the team. Definitely think that there were games where we plugged away and just didn't look that like we had that much imagination. And sometimes, if that's the case, maybe just having an extra forward in and around the box is the answer. Balls can drop to them, and the forwards have shown that they can find the net. So let's see how Frank plays it. I think it's a big season for him. I am hoping we have a couple more signings in, just for morale and for the feel-good factor. That would also help. I think the team, it sounds like they've been trying really hard to get an 8 in, so we'll kind of see how that plays out, and let's hope that it's a successful season. Let's stay behind the team, even if it's a rocky start. Let's stay with them. Definitely think we've got a talented squad. I do think it's going to be a particularly competitive league this season. I think there are a lot of championship teams that have signed well. Millwall, QPR, Norwich, So we'll see. And then I mentioned in the review, you've got wildcard teams like Watford and Middlesbrough who could Wrexham as well. We don't know who they're going to sign. So there's a lot of unpredictable teams that could have good seasons. I think over the 46 games, you normally get found out if you haven't got a decent squad or if you're not adaptable. So let's hope Frank and the team are. I think Doug will back Frank if we're in and around it in January. So I'm overall optimistic. I think my prediction would be somewhere between 3rd and 6th. So I'll say 5th. Another playoff campaign if we can stomach it. But if things fall into place, and we got one or two marquee signings, if the parachute payment teams are a little bit off it for whatever reason, maybe we have a chance of sneaking into that automatic race. I think that would be a massive overachievement if we were to even be in that race and be close. But let's see. I think it's all about, for us, it's all about momentum, keeping the good vibes, keeping the good feeling going. Hopefully we get an upturn from players that did well last year, like Ridoni and Ephraim Mason-Clark. A bit more from Grimes as he settled into the team. And obviously, if the strikers perform even slightly better than last year, that'll improve the goals column. So let's see. Reason to be optimistic. My prediction is that Haji Wright will have a good season if he stays injury free, and Ridoni as well. I think will build on last year, and if we can get the same sort of output from him in terms of goals and assists, I think we're looking in a good place, provided we can tighten up at the back. And if I were to say what my priority would be in terms of signing, it would be a centre-back, just to sit next to Bobby Thomas and just bring a little bit more protection and just keep out the silly mistakes, because I think there were very few goals last year where it felt like the team really worked for them. It was generally us being a bit sloppy or being caught out, and then relying on our keeper to bail us out, which obviously Dovin was able to do while he was in form. But generally, that's not a good strategy. Like, we need to be shutting down those chances and making teams really work to get chances on our goal. So let's see. Let us know in the comments what your predictions are. We can revisit them as the season progresses, and play up Sky Blues. So for the most important bit, we're going to get Eden's predictions for the season. So Eden, where do you think Coventry will finish this season?
6th place.
Okay, just about in the playoffs. We'll take that, I think. And who do you think will be this season's top scorer?
If he stays, Ellis Sims.
Oh, nice. That'd be nice to see. And finally, who will be the player of the season?
Sakamoto.
Oh, Sakamoto. He's one of our favourites, isn't he? All right. Well, thank you, Eden.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you for listening, and if you enjoy it, look out for the rest of the shows. We'll be trying to do a preview of the Hull game this week, and subscribe and share if you enjoyed. Thanks very much. Play up Sky Blues.